Do you even have access to change things?
Yes.
Probably not.
What's today? The 7th?
No, you don't have access. Yeah, you're.
What do you mean
just...
I don't have access?
No,
I'm making suggestions.
You're making suggestions.
This is fake access. All right.
This is the most protected artifact in our working.
Yeah.
All right. Metrics and API metrics endpoint
No,
does not.
We should start with the PRs.
PRs?
Different tab.
Why is that tab? Can I move this tab?
Maybe.
Look at that. We did it.
Wow.
At least we did it for me. I don't know if that's
already
maybe,
made a process improvement.
Maybe I suggested that be changed. It's unclear. This is still not ours, right? Although this is now. Did this repo get moved over to their working group? I saw things were merged.
Yeah, the CFCLI one. Yeah, that one we got. Why is it still here? Because we didn't remove it, I guess. We still have a reference to it here. Because it's probably...
Area. We just remove the area from here or something?
I mean, it shouldn't be on this board at all.
Yeah. So if we change the project it's in?
I don't know. This never happens.
I mean, there's a query up here that says like what
things
it's like finding.
Yeah, but that's so get a project. You need to add issues to a project. So this issue or this PR has now been added to the project. Like we have a bot doing that. So I think you can just close it or archive it in the board. Does that like those three? Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, probably.
It's definitely not on the left anymore.
Yeah, I guess. And on the done column, you can actually hit the dots and then clean it up, archive all. That we sometimes have to do because otherwise we get too many items and then the automation also starts to fill. There's like an upper limit of items you can have on your board.
Or robots.
Yes.
All right. This is still not ours.
Wait.
Over there.
Yeah.
It's a different one. Different one. Same repo. Still not our repo. When was this made though? Last week. Yeah. All right. All right. Same deal. Same deal. Make it disappear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great news. We're done with PRs.
Well, what's that update deploy?
Deploy.
That was that one. Oh, I did actually fix this. Or I did a commit. Right, so this can be closed then. So I did a separate commit that referenced it here.
Troublemaker. That would be. Did you reference it? Wouldn't it link?
Yeah, no, it's before
this one. Oh yeah. Oh, because they didn't sign the.
Yeah, and there was
right.
Like they had trouble with it, and they were fine with it. So I think this can just be closed. I even said a thanks thing. I just didn't close it apparently.
All right. Now we're done with PRs.
I'm impressed we have a clean board.
We don't want to archive this last one. Then it makes it seem like we don't do anything. We got at least one thing in there. All right. Inbox. Metrics and API metrics does not show. Oh, yes. We talked about this last week. Was this? This was the other thing I was supposed to look at. I couldn't find this. I remember two things I was supposed to do from last meeting. I was supposed to. Oh, no, he was going to make an issue. Oh, this is the issue he made. Right. Okay. Yeah. So now I was going to preemptively look at this, but so this is something that we're speculating Puma problematic.
I looked into this and I was wondering how at all we can get generic API metrics. So at the moment, the metrics server is a separate process
Hmm.
which registers the Prometheus collectors for itself. Additionally, there is a collector which collects some Bosch metrics. But the Prometheus clients, they are collecting requests to the metrics server itself. So if you access Bosch APIs, it's a different process or server. So we start the Puma-based director process, and there is a metric server process, which is for the metrics.
That puts us in a better spot than the cloud controller is in, because they just have one server set, and then so now you have the request, the metric request going to any one of them. So at least here we have a single point where metrics are being collected, and we could aggregate the Puma metrics there using gauges or something, where it's like the Puma processes tell the metrics, hey, I got a request. I don't know if that's going to be performant or not, but like just letting them sort of increment gauges could be a way we could gather this in that one process.
But usually the Prometheus clients are collecting the metrics for the API endpoints you have on the server, which happens automatically. But when we have separate processes, we have to implement something in addition to get the Prometheus metrics.
Yeah, we would have to figure out some way of getting the metrics from the Puma to the metric server.
I don't know how this is documented as it should work, but I don't.
Doesn't seem like it ever did.
Yes, I don't know
That
if
seems like
something changed in the meantime or in the architecture, and that's why it doesn't work. Or
I feel like the metrics coming from the Bosch server have changed like 3 separate times, and there's like 3 different Bosch releases you can use to do stuff. This is the built-in one, but like, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if the docs were wrong.
Yeah.
So is this something any of us are going to work on, I guess is the question, or do we just mark it as open for contribution?
Yeah, we're currently analyzing it, and maybe we already find a solution, but yeah, let's see. At least we will investigate a little bit more.
Okay. I'll see if I can find some time to take a look at it too, just the underlying issue, just because I did work on the cloud controller stuff a little bit, although I don't know what solution they ended up with.
But I would like put it as open for contribution, right? Because that reflects. So no, not here.
But that sounds like a label.
Yeah, but it's the status.
Status.
No, it actually said there on the side. You were almost there, like a bit down. Projects and then inbox,
status.
and then it can be open for contribution. Yes.
Got it.
And that should also update it here.
Okay, this is these issues, which we should cross-reference these with his other issue. Did he close that one?
Yes, 2.
He has 2 there. Yeah, he's got many. Difficulties. This is the virtual. He's got I think he's got 4.
I think he doesn't know that we have a GitHub project. But like,
oh, there are 4 here. One of these got solved, and this one, oh, but then he's still okay. I'm just going to reference this. So looking at the logs, there was a health monitor complained that the cert wasn't valid for 8 hours. And then it was, because the timestamps were wrong, which I don't know if anybody's seen this before. I don't know how you would end up in this situation. Because I assume certs are smart about time zones already.
No, it's like your virtual machine time drift with your host. So you generated the certs on your host. And then the time in the virtual machine was lagging behind, I guess.
by 8 hours, which sounds like a time zone problem. Like if you're off by like 8 hours.
Yeah, that sounds like a time zone problem. Wow.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe one of his boxes, I don't know. He said he swapped the time zones or something and then it worked. But yeah. I'm going to leave all these tabs open. So as a reference, I'm going to say, are all these still really necessary? Because this is like the same things, like the Bosch director wasn't rendering. This one, probably the same thing. The Nats, well, no, that's interesting. So the Nats creds let him create the Bosch director VM. Whereas this one's, the agent's failing to come up. I would have expected this same problem with the create env on the director. Oh, this is Bosch. Well, this is create a jump box, but in the Bosch repo. We'll get some, I'll ask him which of these are still active. And this one is from Ramon, where I told him we should use spot instances. And he was like, did you know we can't use spot instances? I was like, oh, didn't know that. Apparently that's only on AWS. So an issue to create the ability to use spot instances, we can use preemptible, which is like spot, but different.
He created a draft thing.
A what?
A draft at the end. Like, is it a PR already? Is it working on actually doing this?
Looks like it, yeah.
I mean, then it's prioritized and we can assign it to Ramon.
Does he have the job specs? Not yet. Yeah, I was wondering what the inputs to this were going to be, just because the spot pricing was very confusing to me as far as like, you got to bid and then it wasn't clear from the docs. If I bid like the price of a current on-demand instance, do I pay that much or do I pay what the current like spot price is? And then it only gets preempted once the spot price is that much. Wasn't clear from the docs because like I don't want to like constantly adjust my bid price.
I think there's a good blog post from Dr. Nick at some point, but that's about the AWS thing, I think.
Yeah. All right. So this is which thing? No, not me. I was tricked. And now the caching is a lie. The gear is important. So you said assign it to Ramon and put it in what state?
Prioritized.
That's not one of these.
No, it is like behind, like they have double functions because of like you share the status between PRs and issues. So they have double meanings. It's a beautiful feature. Like, don't question the system.
Oh, prioritize. There it is. Yes. All right. Fantastic. I think Ramon already enabled the prioritized or the preemptible on our new Bosch instances, Bosch deployed VMs in the stem cell bats, not the actual director, but when the bats spin up, the VMs that it only keeps for an hour are preemptible, which, considering how often those are running these days with all the auto bumping of all the blob store CLIs and the agent, probably will save the foundation some amount of money. All right, those are all of those. And then missing Bosch. Oh, yes. No, there was feedback.
Waiting, I guess.
Yeah. Add a Windows package. This is not ours. How do I get rid of from here? Do I drag it down somewhere else? No.
No, I think updated here. I think if you click it, then it opens like an overlay type thing.
Like what?
So if you click the issue in that list, then it doesn't go open the page, but it like shows you that view where you can update it.
Well, Nobody told me about this. Archive? Or does that?
No, is it done? What's the state? It's not closed, right?
No, I mean, it's the CFCLI again, though.
Oh, that's yeah, no, that can just be archived. Yes.
And that didn't do anything here other than that. Okay. And then certain credit rotation. I don't ever remember talking about this. I must have not been at that meeting. No, this is last week. Did we talk about this last week?
I remember this even before my vacation. I think this is.
Oh, July. Last month
like,
was August.
Yeah. That's
It's
not been
September.
activity for a long time. So we can probably do a close due to inactivity. Just like leave a comment and then close it. So you didn't look at the last activity column. So there's a last activity column.
No, I just forgot that it was September. I thought it was October or August.
Okay.
All right. Do we go through the waiting for change stuff or no?
I mean, like I usually look at the
last date.
activity, like
That
last
makes
activity, if that's like
that's today.
After, yeah, that's the one we looked at.
What? I was tricked. August
So if
24th.
Yeah, the last meeting was the August 31st.
Oh yeah, because it's the 7th. That makes sense. Yeah, none of those.
Yeah.
All right. What's next? What do we do next?
We have
look
the
at databases.
discussion. No.
Yes.
Could we shortly discuss the one discussion topic about supply chain?
Yes.
It's in the Bosch repository, yes.
Vendoring.
Yeah. So I think there's basically two sides or two overlapping concerns, and the question is, what are we gonna focus on? So there's the like integrity of our source repository, like of the source, but also like the third-party things that we're putting in, like, or the broader source tree, right? Because a push release in the end is a snapshot of a source tree. Yeah, when you consider blobs being source artifacts, I mean, they can be binaries, but and there is, I mean, some risk with third-party libraries in your vendor directory, right? Like that that the vendor directory doesn't match your GoSum file or something. Same for gems, right? Like that is a thing that you might want to tighten. More importantly, you want to have some proof of where a blob came from. And for blobs, you probably want to do even more, as in you want to know where it was downloaded from, but you also want to know what it is. And like what it is means what's the for example, package name, what's the package URL, what's the CPE, like these things that you would need if you want to generate an SBOM for later use. Like that information for blobs is just missing. For third-party libraries, we actually have those things because a GoSum file can be seen as an SBOM, right? Or at least it can be converted into an SBOM using a scanner or something. for blobs, we don't have that. So I think like, and in this discussion, we have proposed to maybe also include SBOMs in Bosch releases and embed them in there. I'm currently, I don't know, I always go back and forth between the should SBOMs be in the Bosch release, or should we make it so that it's easier to scan a Bosch release with an SBOM? Like, can we export or like emit all the artifact or all the pieces in our source snapshot that we want scanners, SBOM generators to look at? The provenance part we need to do nonetheless. The SBOM part, I don't know yet who should own that. Yeah, so we don't know where these things came from, right? So we have the trust part of we trust a bot. So a CI bot is bumping these things, which is nice, but it would be great to know where these things were downloaded from. And it would be great to know what these things are.
Yeah.
Like if we can capture a package URL or something for those things.
And it is an SBOM itself enough to capture that information?
Yeah, so basically for every blob, you would probably want an SBOM.
So it does seem like, you know, conveniently somebody put a hash here. So like this, each blob reference has the option of referencing an SBOM in the repo that you could, you know, add as part of the add blob, Bosch add blob. Here's the blob, here's the path, here's the SBOM, and it puts it somewhere. I do kind of agree with Behan that source is kind of weird. Like there's no reason we don't make like a provenance or SBOMs folder.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, it's more like it could also just be in your source tree, right? Because like if you are vendoring in some other thing that already has SBOMs in their source repository, right? Being flexible, like basically we have we have source and we have blobs, which is basically one big file system, right? So if we can just reference paths in there, you have all the flexibility.
Right. So you could reference it in there if it's an embedded thing, but also maybe a separate spot for stuff that you're creating would make sense. You could also just put it under source too, I guess, source/SBOMs if you wanted, but
and like blobs, you typically also put in a subdirectory, right? So it's like, I don't know, if you look at that file that you had open, usually they have a path in them, right? It's Azure storage CLI. So if you would in source have Azure storage CLI and then the SBOM, right, that would actually be pretty nice.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that's one part of it, right? So adding or require, I mean, the ability to add an SBOM to an Bosch add blob, I think would be really valuable. Then there's also the tightening the how a blob gets added, right? Like how do we act the environment in which it was added. So we do that now in CI, but you can also do it manually on your machine, right? So ideally having a trusted way to do that, and that could be implemented with, say, a reusable GitHub action, where you would have a GitHub action actually do the Bosch add blob, and then sign an attestation saying that it added that blob and it produced these files, and have that in the source repository makes it so that you can actually confidently say this thing was not tampered with, right? Because that's like there's a bit of an opportunity for tampering, right? You could, I don't know, fork the CLI or just make some changes to the CLI, run the CLI locally, and it produces a different thing. Or you, before committing it, you make a change.
Yeah.
I mean,
feel like
it's not a big risk, but that's like what supply chain security is about, right? Like it's closing those. Like we already are in a pretty good spot with Bosch as a whole, but there's just like some tiny things left, potential attack factors that we could tighten.
Yeah, I feel like that piece of it is like at the lowest end of priority though, like the make sure, because it's like if Bosch, well, I guess it depends. I guess we do have binaries and blobs, A lot of times it's source, but sometimes it's binaries and you can't really validate. Or source, you like, I can validate that this source is one. Although, to be fair, if most of it is still like gotten from a known good location that you can still, we have SHAs for all of them. And so you can go back
but you
to that
cannot
source.
automate it. Like it's hard to do a lookup. Like if you have a downstream system that cares about these things, it's easier to say, this is where we got it from. Right? Like, so there's with supply chain security, there's two schools of thought. There's like the reproducibility thing, right? So we will just reproduce this thing fully in-house and have the same artifact. That's really complex to do. The other thing is just trusting some set of things. And that's like the reusable GitHub Action type thing with salsa attestations. That's where the salsa people are going, which is cheaper.
Of course, it's got their name on it. Of course, it's got their name on it.
Yes.
So, but why do I trust that more than I trust any other process?
No, so we could own that reusable action. Like, so the foundation could implement.
Right, but then why do I trust that? Like, I guess there's still a level of trust being put onto some entity and some piece of code that, like, okay, yeah, I trust what that is doing. And somebody hasn't tampered with that thing.
Yeah, but that thing, you know that it was executed on GitHub, and GitHub in its identity.
Why do I trust GitHub?
Because the community, everybody trusts GitHub. No, I mean, like, you need to trust your build system, and like putting. I
actually don't trust GitHub at all. I trust Git because GitHub actually can't mess with my source code without me knowing about it.
Yeah.
Like, I trust Git. GitHub, like, there's not a great level of, I don't distrust them, but like, I don't put any confidence in what they're doing.
I mean, I think that's where, like, at least the consensus in the community is going, like that GitHub is at least salsa level 3 compliant, and proving that for our own concourses is hard.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not verifiable. Like you need an auditing, like an external auditing person to come in and look at all the stuff you're doing. And like for GitHub, that can be done. Right, because it's such a big thing and everybody knows about it, so it's like useful investment. So yeah, we can like say, okay, this thing can be trusted, and there's proof of this, blah blah blah. External people looked at it. It's not feasible for Concourse, for our own hosted Concourse instances. So like that piece is better to run on GitHub.
Yeah, which seems fine. It still seems to me like recording that path of trust is a higher priority. Like recording, this is the blob, this is where we got it from, this is what we know about it. So that somebody could come by, unfortunately not in an easily automated fashion, but you could come by and be like, okay, this is the SBOM. I can show that this thing still matches that source location.
That reusable GitHub Action thing is not a thing that I want Bosch to. That's like a thing that we can build on top of it, right? This discussion is just about making sure that we can put that stuff in the Bosch CLI, like these files. If something produced an attestation, we can have it in the source tree, and it services through the Bosch CLI. So Bosch CLI shouldn't care about any of that. It shouldn't care about like validating attestations. That should happen around this, right?
Right.
And that would probably need to be fleshed out, and that probably leads to an RFC that then needs to be adopted by everybody but I mean, like, that's not Bosch. Like Bosch needs to just be able to deal with these files if they exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what this is about, I guess. So making sure that we can embed these files, and then how are we going to surface these files? So once you have these files and you know about these files, and given a release, can you then like inspect the release and show these files? I even thought that maybe we can do something where we can go from a Bosch release to an OCI image, right? So an OCI image would just contain the it would just contain the the source tree, but also like these supply chain files, so that it's easy to run an SBOM generator against it. So we basically say because a lot of these SBOM generators support OCI images, right? That seems to be a pretty common format. The problem that I feel we have with batch releases nowadays, when you run such a scan against it, it's the nested tar structure that's a problem. So we could flatten that structure, but it's also the sorry. People around me. It's the lack of it's sometimes there's files in your tree structure that you don't want scanners to look at. For example, I don't know, some test directory that's actually not used, or like with the Go binary, the source of Go itself, right? It has all these like performance things with Go mod files in them that have outdated dependencies that nobody is actually using, but that are causing scanners to find all sorts of high CVs, right? Like that, those types of things we want. So we want to have more control over what we're surfacing as authors. But I don't know if we actually want to be the ones generating SBOMs, because SBOMs, I don't know, they seem kind of like there's always a different format that you need, or a different version of a format that you need. So having an ability to, given a batch release, export a thing and then run that flavor of scanner against it is probably more valuable as an interface. That's where my current thinking is going. I don't know.
I also think that we should focus first to enable management of such data. Don't care about generation or attestation. And if we see another additional value in something like that, then we can iterate again over that. But we can narrow the scope here, just as is also the title of the discussion, to make possible to provide such data, at least in the batch release, which is also not trivial, as you explained. Yeah, there are a lot of different options.
Yeah, the question is also like, are we gonna have opinions about types of these files, and do we want to limit the list of types that we support? Like that's, I think, in the proposal here, right? Like certain types we want to support.
If we don't deal with validation or generation, why we want to limit the?
I mean, yeah, that's the question. Like, so if you go with the OCI image, then it's basically you just show that expanded source tree that is embedded in a batch release, right? And just expose that. So then at that point, you maybe don't care at all, because you already have options in your spec file to filter files, right? So you can limit what you have there. Or so
isn't the OCI image sort of a different aspect though? Like even if you allow taking a batch release and making an OCI, you still then want to save the SBOM data as part of the release, right?
No, it's not part of the release. No, so like it's just like a release needs to be easily scannable, I guess, right? You need to be able to have a way to, from a release, produce an SBOM and have enough control as a release author that the SBOM makes sense.
But there's not enough data to create an SBOM from a batch release currently, though, right?
Yeah.
No, like I don't care what your scanner is. Yeah, blobs.
Blobs have a problem. So that's the part of like, we probably for the batch add blob, we want to require or add an SBOM, or the ability to add an SBOM.
And I don't have a lot of confidence these scanners are going to be able to make sense of a lot of the source directories either. Like some of them, sure, but like there's always
directories, they're just gonna find Go mod files and those types of things. Like that, it's only about those things, right?
I mean,
those are
some of it's about those things. Some of it's like I don't know. A lot of them are poorly structured Go repositories with back from the day when like GoPath, we like exported GoPath and whatnot. But then a lot of them aren't Go code. They're like there's a long tail of like nonsense in Bosch releases that like the scanners are just gonna like throw up their hands and it's like it didn't find this. So we need like it feels like a scanner would be nice, but it's only gonna get us like 80 or 90% of the way there, it feels like. And so we either like make something that's can do, just store the SBOM, or we just give up on that last 20%, which that doesn't sound like an option, that last bit. So it feels like we need some way of embedding the SBOM as part of the release.
Yeah. But then who's going to be responsible for creating it? Like, is it the Bosch CLI when you run Bosch create release? Is it
absolutely not?
No, right?
It's the release author. Whoever's cutting the release is responsible for generating the SBOM
for all the packages.
Yeah. Which I mean, ideally, like here we talk about vendor. I think vendor package like that you can definitely, if packages have SBOM data embedded with them, then vendor package can pull that over too, which is great. So then you get to centralize the problem for those shared packages rather than everybody doing it. Especially since those things are often just binaries that somebody has to identify, and scanners sometimes do that well and sometimes do it poorly. But then it's if the blobs, we make some way when adding a blob, you get some SBOM data that way, you get some vendor package, and then you're left with your source folder and your other things that you it's your job to come up with when doing create release. And like ideally there is a tooling that we make to make an OCI image, so you could just scan it, they generate the OCI image, I'm just going to use the scanner and scan that because I have a very sane project layout that conforms to the scanners are going to have no problem with it. So I just run that, save the SBOM, use that in my create release.
Yeah, so I think there's like that knowledge in Bosch around like you have the spec file and the package name, right? So and that information, if you just blindly scan an SBOM or in Bosch release, that you don't have, right? You don't know which package is actually using which source because it's just all in the source tree and different parts are used by different Bosch packages. So that I think would be something that you want in that, like exporting to an OCI image. Like I would like to see things on the var vcap packages and then the package name and then, I don't know, source or something, right? So you actually know how to correlate it to the Bosch package again.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like as far as the OCI layout, getting it to scan and being able to take that data and bring it back.
Yeah, because like I would like to understand that 20% that you think are like that's not gonna work. Like if we cover, so if all blobs have an SBOM, like I mean, it doesn't have to be now, right? Like you add it to the thread.
There's no way anybody can tackle this
sure.
stuff.
Like, but I mean, like if we can at least figure it out, like a working pattern for all of the releases that are within like CF deployment, right? So that I think would be the scope. I think that should be good enough, and we can iterate on adding the missing things. But like if we have at least a bit of confidence that we can tackle it standardize it enough for those releases, I think we are in a good spot.
Repackaging is probably a lot of fun too.
Oh, that's a thing, right?
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. It really shouldn't be a thing anymore, in fairness. Like the only reasons I know that people do prepackaged, well, it's mostly just cloud controller these days. And it's to get those gems in there, which they should just use Get LFS, just vendor the gems at this point. Like Get LFS avoids the problem why you didn't want to vendor the gems.
Yeah.
Just delete prepackaging.
But those things are like a concern. Like if we go with that like higher level thing, like standardizing how you add blobs and create releases through an RFC, like we can start enforcing those types of things. But we cannot take it away from Bosch, but right, like other layer, we can try to enforce those best practices. Just error if there's somewhere a prepackaging script. I mean, we could add some sort of like strict flag to Bosch create release. That we would, yeah, but I mean, that's totally diverging. So yeah, would be great if people think about use cases that wouldn't be tackled with, that wouldn't work with just scanning an OCI export of a Bosch release. And probably I should elaborate a bit more in this thread on what that would look like, right?
Yes,
because it is
maybe
not,
one example. Oh,
yeah, someone is more like David Tim, who started this thread, is working on doing a proof of concept of that workflow.
yeah, I also wanted to ask our security expert about feedback. I'll try
Yeah,
to
like
do this.
what would work for them? Like if they want to scan Bosch releases, like what would be the right interface for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion topics?
Yes, a short one. I saw that we created automatically by a bot a new Bosch director release, but there was no GitHub release for that. So it's only available on on Bosch.io, but no release notes.
Sounds like the robots failed.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that today. This was, I think, the first automatic final release cut, which is exciting in one aspect and sad in the fact that it didn't work right.
But I mean, like you can easily create a release now, right? GitHub even fills it in for you. Have you seen that feature? It's great.
Yes, except that this didn't involve the package bumps were done by robots, so there's no PR, so it's not gonna like show you, be able to tell you the very nice like, hey, I don't even know what was bumped.
Thanks, CI bot,
everything,
for doing all
literally
these
everything. Thank you, CI bot.
Thank you, CI bot. You're the best.
I think that with the, I don't know if the release notes are persistent or not. We can just run the script again though to get the blobs that changed pretty easily. Yeah,
Good.
We'll get that fixed. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Take
Thank you.
care. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.